Yesterday I was asked on Facebook when I started my Yule prep on what November is spiritually for me. I didn't respond yesterday purely because I was at university all day and exhausted in the evening. I've just got back to Liverpool from Lincolnshire, so I thought I'd quickly sit down and run through it. Now, I can only tell you this from my point of view and how I see things, because we're all different and our paths are all personal, so there never is any truly right or wrong answer when it comes to paganism. Now, the astrological cross-quarter Samhain is on the 7th of November this year, so that's tomorrow, with the lunar Samhain, the Scorpio new moon, on November the 13th. So as you can see, astrologically, Samhain runs for the first couple of weeks of November at least. Well, at least this year anyway. But it does most years as well when you actually look into the dates. So personally, I don't tend to start my Yuletide celebrations until December itself. If the weather feels a bit frostier and chillier before that and feels more Yule before that, I might start it in the last week of November, because I will go with the seasons and how it feels to me. And if I feel complete with Samhain at that time, then I'll follow the wheel and I'll move around with it. It just depends on when I feel completed with Samhain and honouring my ancestors, and when I feel ready for Yule too. Initially, Christmas was never a 2-month season. It's the constant drive for consumerism that has it becoming a 2-month celebration, a 2-month ordeal of stress and pressure. But sometimes I do think that we can lose the true meaning behind the season when it's all about the money and the consumerism. Now, getting cozy with your twinkling lights, that's amazing. I love that myself, I really do. So I totally understand people wanting to bring in that coziness and that nurturing as the nights are getting darker. I completely get that. So each to their own, isn't it? But it is worth bearing in mind that it is the most important commercial day of the year, which is why it's slowly encroached further and further into November. And in some shops, well into October too. You can have Halloween decorations in one aisle and Christmas decorations right into the aisle next door. But for me personally, November is still very much a time of the year to honour the ancestors. And when you think about it, that actually ripples across other cultures and religions too. We have All Souls Day as Halloween, and the very next day we have All Saints Day. And that's the 1st of November. And that is a day for honouring the dead. And that is in the Christian Aramaic faiths. Day of the Dead in Mexico runs across several days also in November. And on each day, different members of your dead, those you have lost and those you remembering, come. So on the 2nd, it will be children. On the 3rd of November, you have the adults who have passed over. They come and visit then, and it does ripple on, and it becomes a full festivity over many days in November. And we also have other national days to honour our dead this month, because obviously we also have Remembrance Day too, and that is all about honouring our ancestors that fought in the war and those that our family members lost in the past. It was a very traumatic time for my nan. She lost half of her family. Her brother, she never got over losing a brother. And that stays with you, and again, that's in November as well. So whether you agree with war or not, which I personally don't, I am not a big fan of war, I can still recognise the loss that our ancestors felt. And I can still honour them as well as people. Regardless of how you feel on war, it is still a time to honour those that were in our families that we lost, that went to war knowing that they may not come back. And obviously, Remembrance Day is a cause that's going to be close to many people's hearts. And that also falls in November. And that ties in very nicely with ancestral remembering as well. So I tend to use the entirety of November to honour my ancestors and to feel them closer and draw them closer to me. I keep my pictures up around the altar with them on. I light candles to them every day. I talk to them, I acknowledge them, and I honour them and I remember them. It's a very sacred and special time for me, and it's not one that I feel ready to rush through to completion in order to move on to Yule. It's one that I like to take day by day, and I'll know when I feel complete with that process, and then I can move on to further celebrations. But like I said before, there is no right or wrong way of doing it, and we can each celebrate it however we want. On Halloween this year, you know, the generally accepted Samhain, 31st of October, I mainly focused on the children that year. Yes, I did a small offering in the fire, but it was primarily about the children, whereas tomorrow I will be doing my Samhain ritual, and I will be holding my meal for the dead, where I leave out an offering for any visiting dead that may come throughout the season. Tradition-wise, Samhain was a harvest festival, and it was for gathering those things that were more that you needed to gather after your first frost, so to speak, or around the first frost. Animals that you had no intention of feeding over the winter period would be slaughtered and stored to get you through the winter. And it's quite common for areas at the end of the harvest to have a big feast together as well, to enjoy the spoils of that harvest. But for some people, the harvest would continue for a couple of weeks into November too, because as you know, we have gardening zones around the UK, and different zones grow at different times. So obviously the celebration rippled on depending on where you were in the country and what your land was doing at that time. So again, Samhain for me is about listening to the land and connecting with the land and seeing what the land's doing too. So yes, it marks the descent into winter. We are encroaching on winter very fast, but November is still very much an autumnal month for me. Whereas obviously Yule marks the turning of the wheel again, and we're heading back in towards the light. So it's very much a light celebration, which again is completely different vibe-wise to Samhain. Although, for a small period of time in history, Christians used to believe that on the 25th of December, no spirits could ever walk the earth. So while they were active, getting their last, shenanigans in before they were banished away from the earth where they were roaming, they would tell ghost stories around the fire on Christmas Eve, and then at midnight they'd go to bed knowing that no matter how scared they were safe in their slumber. So it did become a tradition. So it did become quite the tradition to sit around as a family telling ghost stories on Christmas Eve, which is also where we get Charles Dickens' famous story from. And I've known a few Scrooges over the years. For me, personally, November is still very much a time of Samhain. Them Samhain energies are still high. The veil is still thin. And it's still very much a time for ancestral connection, ancestral honouring, and shadow work, self-work. The ending of the old and the beginning of the new. Harvesting and reaping the rewards from all your hard work over the summer months, all that toil. And when we look at the land, the earth itself is still winding down. It's still slowing down this month. We've still got the leaves turning, they've not fully fallen yet. But the earth itself is all about getting cozy this month and getting ready for the harshness of winter, before it rests for winter. Yet beneath the ground, the roots that provide vital medicine and vital food for the winter. It may look dead and barren on the surface when we're in winter, but that isn't the case. She may be resting and recuperating, but beneath the ground she's still doing the solid root work. She's still channeling that energy into her roots. And again, that's what we do around Yule. We channel our energy into those roots within. But the foundation for that is laid during autumn, just like the earth is doing now. And we follow suit naturally as pagans. We follow that. We're cyclical as well. We follow the cycles of the seasons and take our cues from nature. So right now is our time of preparation. It's a time of getting ready for the winter, for the darker months. And I know it's dark now and it's getting dark handy, so it may feel like it's already here. But we're still in that stage of getting ready. We're still in that stage of preparing. I mean, personally, I am still busy in my garden. I've still not fully got my garden ready for winter yet. I've still got loads of work to do out there. I am so behind. It is unbelievable. So for me, I am very much still in harvest mode right now. And I probably will be harvesting my stuff for another week or two at least yet. And I'm still working on building my pantry up for the winter as well. Getting stock and dehydrating any herbs that I may need over the winter before I will then move on to my root work in the winter and start pulling up those roots when they're ready for me to work with and dehydrate for root medicines. But that, like I said earlier, is me personally, and what feels right to you is what feels right to you. We're all different and our path is all unique. There is no right or wrong answer. This is just how I celebrate November, and you can celebrate it however feels right to you.